It's Wombat Jones for Ramen, Chokehold and Flow Combat here. I am here with Garry the Lion Killer Tonon. He's making his professional MMA debut tomorrow. How you going, mate?
I'm doing pretty good, man. You know, definitely a little bit of nerves, you know, coming into this. I've tried my best to put all that off until it actually happens, because there's no real sense being anxious until I actually step out there. But yeah, man, overall, you know, feeling pretty confident. I'm having a lot of fun out here. Training's been good. We've been traveling a little far to train, but I travel far to train back home too. So.
And we're in Bangkok here in Thailand. Is this the first time you've been to Bangkok?
Yeah, it's the very first time I've ever been to Bangkok. Honestly, I haven't done too much traveling in Asia. I've been to Singapore a couple times. I've been to Beijing and Shanghai, and other than that, I don't really think I've been anywhere on the Asian continent except for obviously Bangkok now. So I'm looking forward to fighting with one and hopefully not just, you know, getting massacred in my first fight to death or something, and hopefully continuing to get to travel around Asia and get to see all these different countries.
And what's the traffic been like? I mean, you said it takes a little while to get there, but it's really not that far. It's the traffic that's insane, isn't it?
So we've been training at a gym called Bangkok Fight Lab here, which is run by some really cool people. They've been really nice and hospitable to us. But man, like, to get there from where we are, just so people have a frame of reference, this hotel is close to the venue, but everything else in downtown Bangkok is probably like 30 minutes away that you would go to. Like, there's definitely like places you can eat and stuff like that, but if you're going to anything mainstream, it's probably going to be a minimum of 30 minutes away, and that's without traffic. Once traffic's factored in, it can be anywhere from an hour to an hour and a half. So basically our training commute every time we're here, just to train leading up to this fight, we got to sit in an hour of traffic going there, an hour of traffic going back. But that's pretty much what happens at home, because I live in New Jersey and commute to New York, so every day is over an hour commute, so it's whatever, it's normal.
And we're only probably an hour and a half away from weigh-ins or something like that?
Yeah, we're getting pretty close. I got to weigh in a couple hours, do my hydration test. That's why you see me continuously drinking water. It's an interesting weigh-in sort of thing with the whole hydration test. I kind of like it, because it definitely stopped me from cutting gross amounts of weight. But at the same time, it's a little frustrating, the hydration test, because I remember the last time I failed it for the Shinya match, the very first one I took. They give you a second try like an hour later, because I trained the morning of, drank the 2 liters of water, and it just didn't absorb into my system in time for, and all I did was a light drilling session. It was like the day before the fight, you know? So a little bit of dehydration can really throw this test off, which sucks, you know, to miss weight.
Now let's talk about your opponent, Richard Corminal.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure if you know, but when you look him up, he's got 2 fight names. He's got Notorious, but he's also got Lionheart.
Yeah.
Now, did you set that up on purpose, or what's going on there?
No, so it's funny that the nicknames, I don't know if he's always had the 2 nicknames. I thought he might have tried to change his nickname leading up to this fight, just so it wasn't like Lion Killer, Lionheart. I don't know. I don't know if he's always had those nicknames, or it was just a coincidence, or whatever the case may be, but it's pretty funny, man. I definitely think people will get a laugh out of that while everybody's announcing. And
he's 4-3 as a pro.
Yeah.
You know, so he's got 7 fights on his resume, and it's your first, obviously. But what's really interesting about his 4-3 record is that those 4 wins come by knockout.
Yeah.
And obviously, you are one of the best grapplers ever to enter an MMA arena. What do you think about that?
Yeah, so I think it's an interesting setup, having somebody who's definitely much more striking oriented, you know, competing against me, who's obviously more grappling oriented up until this point in my career. Yeah, man, it's definitely going to be a challenge, because he hits with power. There's no doubt about that. He's able to finish fights. It's rare that his fights are going all the way to decision or anything like that. Even, you know, his losses are usually by knockout too, one by submission, I think. But yeah, man, I think it's going to be a pretty good matchup, because it's not like some of the other opponents that I could potentially face in one, which are like stadium champions in Muay Thai. He's got intermixed skills in the standing position. He hits with power, but it doesn't look like he's been training Muay Thai for the last 25 years, let's put it that way. So I got to be careful. I got to be smart. These are 4-ounce gloves. People get knocked out very quickly. A friend of mine was just fighting the other day. He's a very skilled, talented striker. Got hit in, you know, a tough spot behind the ear, and, you know, got dropped and ended up losing. So I'm definitely not looking forward to having something like that happening to me. So I'm going to try my best to stay safe and you know, use the skills that I have to win this fight.
And what's the primary difference between sort of getting choked out in practice all day to getting punched in the face?
Yeah, well, I mean, the primary difference is mostly the literal difference, but I think the tough part about mixed martial arts is training intelligently, because there's so many different ways you could set up your training to get ready for a fight. But it's hard sometimes with the intensity of mixed martial arts and the danger of mixed martial arts to train at the near fight intensity. Like in grappling, one of the great benefits of grappling, and one of the reasons why I think, you know, although you see tons of mixed martial arts fans, those same fans are much less likely to actually be into mixed martial arts. Maybe they grapple, or maybe they do some other one aspect of one of those things, but it's rare that many mixed martial arts fans are actual MMA fighters, right? Not to say that there aren't some, but I'm saying there's a huge number of people that probably just sit on their couch and watch it and would never even dream of stepping into a gym and sparring with somebody, right? Because the danger is just way too high. Whereas in grappling, you can get away with training near 100% intensity and nobody's going to get hurt because everybody just taps out. It doesn't really work like that with striking. So you have to find creative ways, whether it's through drilling, whether it's through watching tape, whether it's through kind of changing your sparring regimen around a little bit, or whether it's through equipment, to make things a little bit safer so you're not just taking massive amounts of brain damage, you know, leading into preparation for these fights. Whether it would affect you long term, the brain damage, or whether it affects you in the short term and it makes it, you know, let's say I get knocked out week 4 into camp, well now I have a much better chance of getting knocked out in my fight. You know, you gotta be really careful about these things. So I'd say the biggest difference is just finding creative ways to get better, because in jiu-jitsu, you do some drilling, you train hard live sparring. It's pretty simple, you know, but MMA, it's tricky. You gotta find the right training partners, you gotta have the right equipment, you gotta have the right coaching. Like, if those pieces don't come together, you get hurt, you know?
And speaking of coaches, you know, you're very well known for your leg locks, obviously. Mm-hmm. When you go and you have a look at your record, that's the most amount of submissions you have. And, you know, you're part of the Danaher Death Squad and all that sort of thing. But obviously, diving on a leg in MMA can get you punched in the face a bunch of times. So have you worked out a way where you can still implement that sort of thing, or is, you know, is that what we're working on here? Yeah,
it's interesting because leg locking carries a certain amount of risk in mixed martial arts that it doesn't really carry so much in the jiu-jitsu world. The most that you'll be penalized in terms of going for a leg lock in the jiu-jitsu world is in certain competitions you'll be penalized by points. Maybe I lose 2 points or something like that, and the other guy, because the other guy gets on top, or in an ADCC situation you lose a point because you're pulling guard or something like that for a leg lock. But the payback for going for a leg in MMA could be potentially much worse. You know, I mean, I could get TKO'd or something. You see, even some of the most effective guys at leg locking, Rusamar Palhares, who most of the time, if he gets a hold of a leg, he just obliterates somebody's knee, and that's the end of the fight. But there are times, you know, somebody manages to avoid the leg lock for a little bit, and then he gets TKO'd on the floor. You know, so it's definitely frustrating to deal with, you know, having that new element of, all right, I'm on bottom, I can't just take my time here, I'm actively getting hit. So it changes a few different things. The first is the element of off balance. You have to consistently keep your opponent off balance, or they're always able to throw strikes. And I think that's true in many different positions, but specifically leg locking, where you're open to strikes. That's gonna be a big part of what's changed in my leg locking abilities. Is I'm focused on off balance number 1 constantly, and that's it. At no point in time while I'm doing this do I just stay static. There's always some sort of movement. And then the other thing is I've turned leg locking into more of a reactive strategy as opposed to a proactive one. I'm not gonna say I never will proactively go for a leg lock during a fight, but oftentimes you're gonna see it, and I can just see this in my shootboxing sparring, you're gonna see it happen because I'm in on a takedown on the fence, I'm feeling like I'm not really able to get anything going, and instead of having my opponent push me away and then having to reset on the feet, as I'm falling off of my opponent, sitting back into his legs and then going after the leg. I think you'll see a lot more of that than you'll see me just sprinting forward, you know, and sliding to my butt and into my training partner's legs. Not to say it couldn't happen. There's some entries that I do that are like that, but I think I'm far more likely to do it as kind of like, oh, here I have this thing in my back pocket to try when, you know, the conventional methods like taking my opponent down aren't working.
Are you a gambling man?
I don't gamble that often, but occasionally it gives me a thrill, for sure.
So, if you're a gambling man, then what are the odds that you knock this guy out tomorrow night?
The odds that I knock this guy out, man, it's so funny because, like, in my heart, I love nothing more. You know, like, everybody asks me what are my predictions, this, that, and the other thing, and like, that's what I would really love to do in this fight. If it was a perfect world, if I could repeat this event, you know, 1,000 times and, you know, have whichever result out of that 1,000 times happen, that's what I would do. Every single time I tried, I would be trying to knock him out because I want to try these new standing skills that I've been practicing, and I want to work on them. I always have a mindset of preparing for the future. So even though I know that my grappling skills are obviously better than this guy's, my initial instinct is, oh wait, I want to work on this new thing that's going to get me better. But at the same time, it's like you only have one fight. That's it. You know, I only get one chance to try to beat this guy. So at the same time, it's like, well, I could try my striking skills, but that could also get me knocked out. You know what I mean? Do I believe that I could knock this guy out? Absolutely, without question. I'm hitting with power in the standing position. Some of my training partners are complaining about it sometimes. You know, obviously I'm new at this, so I have to. It's hard for me to control myself at certain points. I don't really know how to hold back as much. So I definitely have the ability to do it, but you know, the question of will I do it in the ring, because the answer is difficult because I'm considering like, well, that's pretty new for me, this whole striking thing. It's probably not as safe for me to try to take it into that territory it is to take it into a grappling territory. Man, I don't know. I don't know if I could give you a perfect, you know, odds, you know, as to what would happen in terms of knocking him out, but I definitely say, let's put it this way, I'll say that the likelihood of this ending in a TKO is more likely than it ending in a KO, because there's a good chance that the way that I've been training for striking is always mixed with takedowns. So more than likely, while I'm throwing combinations, there's going to be an opportunity to take him down that I'm going to take, and it'll probably end through striking on the floor more than anything. That I can see happening as a mainstream game plan without much risk, because you know, when you're on top of somebody striking in MMA, that's fairly safe. You know, the question of you know, staying, standing, trading, trying to just KO a guy, that's a different story.
And for all the punters out there, it doesn't matter if you TKO or you KO, they pay the same, baby.
That's
so,
true.
Mate, you said in an interview that your mum, she didn't want you to play football because it was a little too dangerous.
Yes, yes.
And she pushed you into wrestling instead. So my question though is, maybe with a little bit more of her support early on, would you have been a bull rider?
Did you see the video?
I did.
Oh, nice, nice. Yeah, I think so, maybe. That actually always interested me. I always thought it was cool, the bull riders, man. But no, I don't know, man. She was always keeping me away from these contact sports as much as possible. She was a single mother. You know, my dad I would see occasionally, so there was a lot of female influence in my life. And she also worked at a children's hospital. So she got to see, it's a children's hospital for kids with special needs. So a lot of what she got to see on a day-to-day basis was a kid who was a normal, you know, 8-year-old kid riding his bike one day and got hit by a car, wasn't wearing a helmet, and then, you know, for the rest of his life, physically or mentally, he wasn't able to do the things that he used to be able to do. And for her, it was such a tough thing to have to see every day that I think that kind of played into her, like, being nervous about me doing anything dangerous. You know, I think she got to see all the repercussions of just these crazy accidents happening to people, and them having to live with that for their entire life. So she was just worried from the very beginning about anything like that ever happening to me. She tried to protect me to the best of her ability, but, you know, my ambitions kind of outgrew her limits at a certain point. You know, the older and older you get, there's only so much you can do to stop you. Thankfully, eventually, people were able to convince her to let me do this, because I think I've made quite a life for myself out of this, and I'm not brain dead yet. You know, I haven't had any crazy accidents in jiu-jitsu or anything like that, so I think things are going relatively well. And the funny thing is that I mentioned football. She's a huge football fan. She loves the Pittsburgh Steelers, and you know, she supports them. And I was like, listen, you know, because we were having arguments when I wanted to get into MMA. She's like, you don't want to do that, do you? You know. And I'm like, well, no, yeah, I'm interested in it. It's just too dangerous. I'm like, well, if I was ready to become a professional football player, like, would you let me do that? She's like, no, I wouldn't let you do that either, you know? Like, and I'm like, but you watch it on TV. She's like, yeah, but I would never want my son doing that, you know, whatever the case may be. So it's just funny, man. She's an interesting character. One day somebody will interview her and you'll kind of see what's going on.
Well,
that would be a fun
let
interview.
me do that one because, mate, I've got a quote here, and I'm going to quote her. I want you to beat him to a pulp and cover me in his blood in the stands. So
Yeah.
I take it she's kind of okay with what you're doing now.
She corrected me when I posted that, and apparently she said spray his blood over her in the stands.
Oh.
She was unappreciative that I didn't get the exact quote right. But yeah, she's just always, you know, the funny thing is she'll always be resistant in the sense that she wants me to be safe and okay. But once she realizes that I've committed myself to something, and she knows I'm passionate about it, and she knows I'm going to work hard to get good at it or whatever the case may be, she usually goes all in with supporting me once she realizes there's nothing she can do to stop me. So, you know, that was a funny thing. You know, the first couple phone calls 6 months ago were, oh, I don't want you to do this, and you know, now I'm getting phone calls like, kill him. You know, it's crazy, man. She just got that kind of all-in support. She flew out here to watch, so she'll be in the stands watching the fight, which is really exciting. My first MMA fight, for her to be there. Originally, she said, "Oh, I'll never be able to watch you do that." So I'm happy that she had that turnaround.
And barring injuries, mate, how many times can we expect to see you in the one cage this year?
Man, I'd really love to. I'd like to fight a minimum of 3 times this year. I'm trying to get as many fights as I can just because I'm starting this off at age 26, which is relatively young, but at the same time, I'm probably, based off of what you traditionally see people in terms of the length of their careers, I'm probably done somewhere around, you know, mid-30s or so. Maybe you can push it a little bit later than that, and then people kind of just start to drop off in terms of skill level, etc. Just because after a certain point in time, your athletic potential starts to diminish. Or maybe you get, you know, maybe you've had so many fights that you're just not into it anymore, or whatever the case may be. So I'm trying to get all that experience as quickly as possible so that when it comes time to be the best in the world at mixed martial arts, you know, I'm at my peak, you know, sometime in my early 30s or something like that. So I'm very excited to fight as often as possible for this organization.
And like I said, we mentioned John Danaher before, but you obviously got Tom DeBlas in your corner as well,
sir.
who's one of the OGs. Mm-hmm. Does that give you like massive confidence to have 2 guys like that sort of yelling out instructions from the corner?
Absolutely. I mean, it's great to have guys in the corner. You know, from what I understand from a lot of people fighting, though, it's pretty tough. It's even worse than in a jiu-jitsu match. Even in a jiu-jitsu match, sometimes it's hard to hear people. I mean, now we're talking about fighting. You're getting punched in the face. There's people screaming in the crowd. There's all these different things going on, and it'll probably be very difficult to actually get any advice until after I finish the round. So, you know, I mentioned this in previous interviews. As much as this is a collaborative effort, a team effort when you go out and fight, and it takes so many different people to achieve success in what we do. When you actually get out there in the cage, nobody's there in there with you. Nobody else is going to save you other than yourself. You know, I get to like say hi to my friends every round, I guess, but you know, they'll be able to give me some advice there. But I still got to go through, you know, 3 5-minute rounds one way or the other. So it's great to have them, and it's definitely a comfort to have them in the corner. But at the same time, I'm not you know, I'm not dumb enough to realize, or sorry, I'm smart enough to realize that I'm in there alone essentially until the round ends.
Mate, I've only got 2 more for you.
Yeah.
This one is about the main event. I'm not sure how much you know about the 2 guys in the main event.
Yeah.
But you know, do you have any thoughts on the main event? I mean, it's a massive deal. I mean,
yeah.
Marty's going for his 3rd. You know, it's crazy. And Viviana is one of the best MMA, you know, there is.
Yeah.
So what do you think?
It's really exciting to watch these 2 guys square off, especially because Martin holds the belt in my weight class currently. So it could potentially be somebody I have to fight in the future. You know, at the top of my weight division. So I'm very excited. I haven't really seen a crazy number of each of their fights. I've studied intermittently different fights for ONE FC, but I haven't done an in-depth study of the guys specifically in my weight category yet. Or especially outside weight categories. So I've maybe only seen Martin fight a couple times or some highlights, and I haven't seen Viviana so much. I understand that both of them, intermix a little bit of grappling, so that'll be cool to see from my perspective. I'm excited to see that and see how it plays out, and it'll be good for me to watch. There's actually two guys, I think Shannon Warchai is fighting too, also in my division. So it'll be kind of good to get to watch some of these other guys that are in my division fighting during this card, live.
And mate, last question, and I won't take up too much of your time because we've got weigh-ins. Now, weigh-ins are all about making weight and food and all that sort of thing. So I have to ask you one question, which I think every single one of your fans really wants to know.
Yeah.
And it's very, very important for me. I'm actually an old executive chef. So
okay.
Why the hell do you like hot pineapple?
That's a good question. It's funny. I kind of discovered that on my own. I think I had seen that they were like putting pineapple on pizza, and then I decided I wanted to have. I heard like it was like ham and pineapple was supposed to go on it or something like that, and then I just was like, well, why ham? Let's put bacon on it. So then, as a kid, I used to put bacon and pineapple on pizza, and it was pretty weird. But then again, I was also the kid to walk over to the soda fountain and just press every button into the cup just to be a weirdo. So I mean, I've always been like that. I always want to try like new weird things, and I understand the criticism from from conventional food eaters, but I like to try new things, man. There's very few. One of the interesting things about my diet, I do eat a lot of very terrible things, but I have a very broad spectrum of things that I'm willing to eat. There's very few things that I've ever eaten and I'm just like, oh no, I'll never eat that again. I'm pretty open to trying new things.
All right, mate, so maybe just look down the camera now, let everyone know where we can follow you. Like we said, maybe some MMA people who've never seen you grapple before, don't know who you are. Where can we find you on social media? Yeah,
so you can pretty much just search my name, Garry Tonon, and find me. My name is pretty much all of my handles for most of my social media, whether it's Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. I have a Facebook page as well, Garry the Lion Killer Tonon. Yeah, you just follow me there. I put out some weird stuff sometimes. Maybe not as much shit talking leading up into this fight because it's brand new for me. But eventually you'll see some more creative stuff with mixed martial arts when I get a little bit more confident and cocky. Yeah, there's some fun stuff on my social media for sure.
There he is, Garry the Lion Killer Tonon. Thank you so much.
Thanks.